I think. Did I get the thing right? Did I get the thing right? I think I have it right. Right? Do we? You might not have heard anything through that hole. Let's see how we're doing here. Let's head over here. Hey there, friends. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it might be in your part of the world. Welcome back to the live stream. My name is Jeff Fritz, and today we're going to be talking about the .NET command line. We're going to be talking about all the cool things that you can do with the command line, that base level set of tools, capabilities, features that are available on all operating systems so that you know how easy it is to get started, get installed, and get running, regardless of where you are, and start doing some cool things with building and interacting with your projects at the command line. Let me say hello to the chat room. They're right over here. They're hanging out. Hello, hello. Let me bring on, I believe it's that one. There we go. They're right here. And we'll start a little bit of AMA for the next bit here. How you doing there, friends? Let's see. Butter NGO. Hello to you. Thomas is here on YouTube. Moaz. Hola to you. CSharp Titan. Greetings to you in Australia. Hope you're having a very good evening. The Neo. Big yo to you. Hello there. Carl Edwards, greetings to you in sunny and cold South Africa. I'll trade you a day of 90% humidity and 90-degree heat here in the Philadelphia area for your cold South Africa winter there. My goodness, I will trade that easily. Cynthia, how you doing there on YouTube? Cynthia asks, which Twitch channel is this on? We're on the Visual Studio channel on Twitch. So on YouTube, go youtube.com/.net. Over on Twitch, twitch.tv/Visual Studio, and you'll find us over there. Take your pick. Some folks enjoy one service more than the other. And you'll see messages floating back and forth. There's a restream bot that'll share messages between the services. How you doing there? Carl Edwards, Thomas Legrand, good to see you. Apricot, greetings to you in Ukraine. Hope you're staying safe. Hope things are going well for you. Brian is here from Mississippi. Mr. Ecuador. I see what you've done there. Hello, hello. T. Rish, how's it going on YouTube? Christopher, hey yo. Dezzles is here on Twitch. Good evening to you, Dezzles. Dr. Cox on Twitch. How's it going there? Cinzy Mac is here from Scotland. Mr. Ecuador chimes in and says that they're here from Poland. Welcome. UNESCO, how you doing there? Yeah, we got the geek hat going here. The Ink Spoots. Hello, you love the hat and C#? We'll have some fun. We're not exactly going to write too much C# today, but we're going to do a lot at the command line. Really the goal here today, we've shown in the last two episodes how you can, there are all kinds of tips and tricks how you can be a better developer using Visual Studio, using Visual Studio Code, but there's a lot of folks that want to use other editors. You want to use a text editor. Maybe you're a big fan of Notepad. I know there are Notepad fans out there. But there are folks who do like Vim and Emacs and prefer those for their code editors. Okay, so if you're going to use text editors like that, maybe you have another text editor you like, Pico or Nano or whatever it might be. You can still work with the .NET tools all at the command line. They're available, and we've got some neat tricks and things that you can do to make that a good experience. So we're going to go through and talk about that today. Let me get some music playing in the background, and I want to continue greeting folks here in chat. Let me open up the Spotify here. I'm going to go to my Stream Beats Synthwave playlist here, and we're going to jump down here. I think I should start with this song. This is called Banhammer. And I clicked right away from it. What? Scroll back down to it. Where'd it go? I had it. And it just went poof and disappeared on me. I did something. There it is. Banhammer. I think I'm clicking on the name of the album. There we go. This is music that's DMCA free, royalty free. Doesn't matter where you are. On the internet, you can listen to it free of charge. No royalties needed. And there's all kinds of great music out there that you can listen to and if you're on YouTube, if you're on Twitch, if you're on Facebook, doesn't matter. Check it out at streambeats.com. He's got all kinds of genres available for you, and I want to put a big thank you to Harris Heller and his team of creators for making this music that we're listening to today. How you doing? Let me continue greeting some folks here in chat. We'll answer your questions. Any questions you might have about Visual Studio Code, .NET, Azure. We'll talk about those over the next 35 minutes you see here as we get things warmed up and we welcome in folks. This kind of AMA is something that I think is important to share with you, because if you've got questions and you want to just talk to somebody from Microsoft, hey, how do I... this doesn't feel right. Can I get more information about... If I can't answer your question, I can get you pointed in the right direction or get help for you to get you unstuck. So doing a little bit of AMA, I think, helps everybody. And you might see a question that you might have along the way as well, and consequently get a good answer for it. Let me see here. McDonald in Cape Town. Good to be here. Well, good to have you. Thank you so much, McDonald. M. Johnstone in Melbourne, Australia. Oh, my goodness. Hope you're having a very good evening there in Melbourne. Scrolling here. Scrolling. Hello to the Neo in the Matrix. The Neo is the one. Can't chat on Twitch. Must be verified. Yes. We do ask for folks to on Twitch to have a mobile number, just to reduce the amount of bad actors that pop into Twitch. Pretty awesome stuff showcased at Microsoft Inspire. I'm glad you're enjoying it, C# Titan. Yep. You prefer your overloaded and bloated Visual Studio 2022? What's funny is there's a lot that's been done to Visual Studio to strip it down and make it and put less into the default configuration with Visual Studio. Starting with Visual Studio, I think it was 2019, we changed up the installer to make it a little bit easier to see that you don't need to install everything, so that you could put together a smaller install of it. And there have been folks working on and trying to figure out ways to make full Visual Studio a little bit smaller, faster experience. No announcements or anything, but of course, there's always people doing research on our code base, on our tools, discussing, planning, figuring out what's next. And we don't have any announcements. We've had a Microsoft build and no announcements there. There's absolutely, and there always are, folks researching and figuring out what's our next point release, what's our next major release, and we'll see what happens at some point in the future. But there is a dedicated Visual Studio team that hears that Visual Studio is a large experience. So they've absolutely heard that feedback. The Inkspots asks, is anyone coding with Nano on WSL in Windows? See, now that's... thank you for asking that question. Is there anybody coding with Nano using WSL? Or if you're using Vim or Emacs with WSL on Windows? Because I feel like there's an interesting mix there. And I'd like to know a little bit more about why you would choose one of those text editors in WSL on Windows instead of Visual Studio Code or Notepad or another more visual text editor or code editor in Windows. Why would you choose the smaller dedicated text editor in WSL? That's a very good question, the Inkspots. I'm curious to see what folks say here. The Neo says, couldn't install .NET. You can't install .NET on a BIOS. Did you get the Playwright stuff working? No, I haven't done any more work on that. I had other meetings and things yesterday. We'll have more details about that tomorrow, Cinzimac. For those of you that don't watch, on my other stream on twitch.tv/csharpfritz, we've been doing some development with and Playwright testing, building, testing, writing code that executes and tests websites using Playwright. Playwright is an open source series of tools, testing tools that you can download and use with Node, with Python, with .NET, with Java to exercise your applications, your web applications, using Chrome, Firefox, or Edge. Chrome, Firefox, or Safari. I think it doesn't do Edge. I think it's Safari is the third one. So, really cool tool. Check it out at playwright.dev. You tried Edlin, did not go well. Well, Edlin's you're out there when you're using a line-based editor like Edlin. Somebody's going to drop a comment in here about CopyCon next. Apricot asks, do I ever use tree structure in DDD aggregate roots? I do not. I don't like to use large graphs of objects when I'm working with domain-driven design. That's my preference. I like to keep things in my code as simple as possible. When I need to build and work with a larger application, something in a larger structure that is going to have that level of complexity, in my mind, that's a code smell. That's an architecture indication that we need to simplify things. Because I want more developers to be able to consume and work with my architecture than just the folks that are smart enough to invent it. So that's my point of view. Other folks can have different opinions, and that's okay. That's their projects. Carl says, I've learned about tools that I had no idea existed from watching people like me, like this guy. It's an important service I do. Thank you, Carl. I appreciate that. I find it interesting that folks like watching the beginner series. They like to rewatch beginner series because they like the reinforcement that their skills are up to date and that they're doing the right things. And I'm thinking we're near a time where it makes sense to go back and relaunch the C# beginner series. I'm on vacation for the next 2 weeks, and I will be back the 9th of August. So maybe for that stream, we'll talk about doing... Actually, no, I'm sorry. I'm around the 26th. Maybe we do an errata stream on the 26th. Just straight AMA. All kinds of, hey, I've got questions, let's answer and talk through things. And everything's on the table. We'll make up demos on the fly for the 26th, and we'll do an errata stream. Just complete ask me anything, and we answer and solve and show demos throughout the stream. Bring sample code, and we will dig into it. But probably on the 9th, we'll start back on the C# for Beginners series. Did I get any answer from the VS Code team about the Zoom thingy? I've nudged them, and it's moved up the priority stack. I can tell you that. Yes, we're going to talk about .NET Test a little bit. You love Visual Studio, says Carl? Fantastic. You know what? As a longtime developer who started with Visual Basic 6 among the Microsoft products that I was using, actually, no, I lied. Visual Basic 4 I used at one point, but VB5, VB6, Visual InterDev. So as somebody who's used every version of Visual Studio, I'm a big fan. Absolutely. And I'm thrilled and I'm honored that I was asked to join the team that makes it. So, that makes Visual Studio. There are fanboys of different tools and editors, to be sure. How you doing there, Tarun? Tarun asks, isn't it unfair that Visual Studio has first mover advantage for supporting language features when compared to other IDEs like Writer? It's the same company. It's the same product and folks that are working on it. Like, the proposals and information are published for everybody at the same time on the .NET repositories. The discussions of new language features go on the Roslyn GitHub repository before they get added to Visual Studio. So there is no wall here that says Microsoft teams that work in the same department aren't allowed to work together. That's not a thing. That never was a thing. That was never promised to be a thing. What was promised to be a thing was as .NET and language features are developed, they will be shared, documentation will be published, and all the code for those made open source and available on GitHub, and they are. So that's, while it may be perceived as unfair, quite frankly, the hundreds of millions of dollars of investment that are being made annually in supporting and growing and managing those developer teams do deserve a little bit of return on that investment. We can't build the fastest programming languages and efficient tools and debuggers for free. That doesn't work like that. Hello, Ashish. Cinzimac says, I managed to build some stuff that works for Playwright, ASP.NET Core, and unit testing. Drop me a line on, I appreciate the feedback there, Cinzimac. Drop me a line on Twitter. Same handle as, same screen name as on Twitch, CSharpFritz, so I can follow up on that. Does anyone at Microsoft use Rider? No. We have our own product. We use our own product. So, what if you're used to using all the CLI tools and really enjoy the Linux editors, being happy not being distracted when coding? That's totally cool, the ink spots. That's the response that I typically hear from folks who prefer the Linux-based text, the Linux text editors. And I appreciate that. I can completely appreciate that. M. Johnstone asks, why MS Core lib TLB type library com object properties aren't visible? Why no datetime offset, time zone info? MS Core lib is a core library. I believe it's on Windows, so it's closed source. So I think that's the one you're referring to. Jimmy says, I will do an upgrade from C# 8 to 12. Should be easy to do because the C# languages are completely backwards compatible. C# Titan on Twitch asks, is Visual Studio Community the same as Professional? Can't see anything different between the two. You are correct. Visual Studio Community and Professional are the same except for the licensing. Visual Studio Professional has a licensing agreement that says that you're a business that has a certain amount of income or a certain number of developers working at the organization, and you're entitled to a certain level of support that you purchase that license to go with. Am I even looking at YouTube comments? Asks Tarun. No, I'm not. I'm not looking at YouTube comments. I'm literally looking at this up here, and I'm catching up here. So no, I'm not looking at YouTube comments. Cinzimac. Okay. Scrolling down here. Decryptor. Yeah, licensing. Right. I'm seeing the questions back and forth. On Twitch, Loviz says, hey, Mr. Fritz, just joined. You going to give any thoughts on Inspire Day 1? No, I don't watch Inspire. So Inspire isn't really a developer event. So I don't watch that. So I don't have any feedback on it. I'll catch up on it sometime later this week. So I have my own events to plan and manage. Why can't Visual Studio be open sourced? Asks Tarun, considering C# is open. Because the team said so. It's a business decision. Done. Am I going to talk about the .NET tool command? Asks Mr. Ecuador. We can talk about it. Sure, we can talk about .NET tools at the command line. Absolutely. I was going to focus more on building, restoring, watching, testing. I wanted to show format. I didn't get format into the notes, but we can talk about it as well. Yep. The Neo asks, how can I make a full Visual Studio clone with Vim? OmniSharp, and I will show you how to install OmniSharp today. I don't have my Vim config loaded and running here, but I'll show you where you can get all the instructions to do that, and we'll talk through those. And show you what it looks like. There's some screenshots and examples of what that looks like. OmniSharp does not support Blazor syntax highlighting, but C# and the other things you'll see turn up and work very nicely. Hello to you, Dirtborn on Twitch. Hello. How can they improve Visual Studio if they use something else? Exactly, the Neo. There's the .NET team uses Visual Studio to build .NET and Visual Studio. So it's very much a dog fooding type of experience. Can I refer you to Microsoft? I don't know who you are, so no. Sorry. Go to careers.microsoft.com to see the jobs that they're currently hiring for. Let me see here. I see the messages from Stream Elements. Yes. Blah, 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 blah. You'll upgrade yourself from C# 8 to 12 by beginner series. Okay, sure. That works. That's cool. Visual Studio Code is not far. No, Visual Studio Code is completely open source. Visual Studio Code is completely open source. GitHub.com/Microsoft/ I think it's VS Code is where you can find that. Yeah, and that's that'll get you all the source code. And there are some folks that do not like. We do insert some telemetry into Visual Studio Code. There is some telemetry in the .NET command line. That's how we get feedback to improve these tools. You're welcome to turn it off. There are folks that have checked out the source code, created a copy of the source code, and removed that telemetry. That's up to you if you want to use it that way and not provide feedback. If Microsoft makes a decision that doesn't include the way that you're using the tools, if you turned off the feedback, we have no way to get error reports and logging of features that are being used so that we can make those appropriate decisions. So 6 of one, half dozen of the other. If you don't provide us feedback and you don't send us telemetry, we can't make a decision to make it better for the way that you use the tools. McDonald says, I usually build RESTful APIs with Node.js. Can I point you to a resource to help you with building RESTful APIs in .NET? Check out this playlist that you're watching right now, McDonald, on YouTube. So you're on the .NET channel. Check out the playlists. They're going to be somewhere right over in here. And scroll down, look for C# with CSharpFritz. There is a series in there about building APIs with .NET. There are other building APIs with .NET videos on the .NET channel that'll get you pointed in the right direction. We also have a series of training material on learn.microsoft.com. Click into the web section there, and there are instructions for building microservices with APIs. So you have this guy teaching and talking through and discussing APIs. You've got training material over on Learn, and you've also got other instructors that talk through and do the very screencast-centric presentation of those same content. Dirtborn on Twitch asks, when I aim to learn something, what is my path? YouTube or something? No, I read documentation. I'll read documentation or I will read code. When I learn things from the .NET team and figure out how to put them into presentations and whatnot, I read their test code or the code that they've been writing. So I'll read documentation as well. Yeah. On YouTube, Nick Liu asks, do I use Obsidian or any other notebook? I do use Obsidian. I'm a big fan of Obsidian, and I have the daily notes features turned on. And as I'm in meetings from day to day, I create a new daily note so I can refer back and search back through my notes very, very easily. OneNote's a great tool, but as somebody who enjoys writing Markdown and likes that I can lift and generate notes in Obsidian, I can lift those and drop them right into GitHub to create project documentation, sample documentation, and back and forth like that. I really like that with Obsidian. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of Obsidian. I'm glad you're excited for the stream, Ashish. On YouTube, Tarun says, my opinion, if you're a business, then you're forced to pay for licensing for Visual Studio. Isn't this a barrier to companies to enter the .NET C# ecosystem? No. Not at all. Because you can download and use the tools like I'm about to show you today, and you can use whatever editor you would like. If you'd like the higher-end, more productive tools, you can download and use those as well. You can download and use Visual Studio Code with OmniSharp and .NET completely free. No charge, no licensing, free. Free as in liberty. Do what you'd like with it. Free as in no charge. Build, deploy, and send that wherever you'd like. No barrier. If you'd like to use the C# debugger, it's completely free to use in Visual Studio Code. If you'd like to use the performance tools, the debugging, the productivity tools that come with Visual Studio, yes, we ask you to pay for that. So, no barrier to entry there at all. Folks that think, and use whatever operating system you'd like. Visual Studio Code is available on Windows, Mac, and Linux. So take your pick. Literally, .NET is everywhere that you could want to be as a developer. And if you want to use Visual Studio Code and .NET at the command line, completely free. It's when you want the higher productivity tools that we ask you to pay for them. Downloaded Ubuntu on WSL, downloaded .NET 7, made a simple console app with Nano. That's great, the Ink Spoots. Okay. Ashish asks, any good architecture tips for starting an app from scratch? I believe in Yagni. I believe in you aren't going to need it. Don't over-architect things. Design, build only what you need. A lot of .NET developers fall into this trap of adding an interface for everything that they're building. If you aren't building something where you need multiple providers, multiple implementations of something, don't build interfaces. Work with concrete objects. Introduce interfaces when you need them. And figure out how and where your extension points are when you see those technical needs in the future and extend in that direction. On Twitch, Acid Necro says, I know today is about editors, but can I give a good example on how to use func as a method param? Struggling to understand how to handle the method been passed to make it work. So Acid Necro was talking about using functions, passing an anonymous function. It's not even an anonymous function. It's a function pointer, right, in C#. We have funcs, actions, we have delegates that you can pass around in the C# language. These are pointers that can either be anonymous methods, they can be names of methods that match the signature required. And when you see a func being passed, it's got a series of generic type arguments that come with it. Those are those types that you see in angle brackets next to the name func, F-U-N-C. Those are a list of the various inputs and output parameter types for that function pointer that you're passing in. Now, a func can be anonymous, and you pass in a list of those arguments in parentheses with the little arrow notation and then your syntax. Or it can be the name of a method that implements the function syntax required. When you look at a func, the generic types in it, I can't remember if it's the first or the last parameter that's the first or the last type is the output type. And just pass that around. When you use the func syntax and you get comfortable with it, it just makes sense. I always end up looking at the code completion to remember which one's the output parameter. All of them, you could have many parameter types in that generic type constraint. One of them is the output. I always look at the syntax to remember which one it is. I can't remember if it's the first one or the last one. So I always run into that. So let me see here. C# Titan on Twitch asks, saw an entry on the VS Mac roadmap that the team are looking to update the toolbar icons to make it similar to Visual Studio for Windows. Yes, and I think that's more and more of what you see where we're trying to consolidate resources between the two instances of Visual Studio so that it's easier to maintain the two. This one gets an update, the exact same update goes over there, and it becomes a little bit easier to deploy. DASA says, I always wanted to ask the best browser to test, develop, dev tool that I feel most comfortable with. I'm a Firefox person. Edge and Chrome are pretty good. Edge is actually really nice for developers. There are some accessibility testing tools that you can download and get for Edge, plugins that are really good. And now that Edge and Chrome have the same Chromium rendering engine, there really isn't much of a difference between them. I like that. I like that a lot. But there are some additional tools that light up in Edge for you that aren't necessarily available in Chrome. So I would lean towards Edge. But I'm a Firefox person. I like using Firefox because it's the other rendering engine. If something works in Firefox, it's going to work in Chrome and Edge. So I feel like Firefox is the lowest common denominator between the three. And don't even get me started about Safari. Safari's off on its own planet out there, and the folks at Apple are doing their own thing. So, catching up here. And Acid Necro, feel free to ask your question on my Discord server, and we can iterate a little bit if you have some syntax there you want to discuss further. Pat Sucks on YouTube asks, are we expecting autosave on Visual Studio anytime soon? Autosave's in there. There is an autosave feature in Visual Studio. I typically don't have it turned on. I have it on in Visual Studio Code, and Visual Studio Code almost obnoxiously will save my code before, like, I'll pause typing and it saves. Like, not even 3 seconds and it's saved. Like, holy crow. But I thought there was automatically save files. Come here, you. There's an auto recover that it saves every few minutes, but for documents, it'll automatically save files when Visual Studio is in the background. Yeah. So you have a couple different options where it will automatically save and put aside recovery information for you. Yep. So the community license for full Visual Studio is very permissive. Yes, it is. On YouTube, Tarun asks, thoughts on Dev Home? I like what they're trying to do. I haven't used it personally yet because I only have one machine. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 11. I have 11 machines in the house. Only one of them runs Windows 11. It's this machine that I use for production, and I do not take preview releases on it because it's my production machine. I need stable Windows on it. So I haven't seen it yet, and I probably won't use it on this machine because it's my production machine. So I don't have any thoughts on it, and I can't use it. So that's how I feel about it. That's great. You're building tools for developers. I can't use it. On Twitch, Dirtborn asks, and we've got 7 minutes left here in the AMA. On Twitch, Dirtborn asks, what cases would I use the record type? So in C# we have the record keyword that you can use so that you can make reference types with one line of code if you'd like. You can add other features to it if you'd like. You can add methods to your records, but a record is a reference type just like a class, but you can define it in one line of code. I like to use records for my DTOs, my data transfer objects. So when I have service objects that I need to pass around between various environments, I like to use records. I like to use records for the output from my APIs. This way, it's not the exact same data type that I'm storing in my database, right, or whatever other data store I might be using. I'm doing a little bit of translation and putting it into a record on output and receiving something that's going to come in as a record type and put that away in whatever data source I might be working with or acting on. The record's real easy to use, real easy to define, and to provide that clean object that I can pass between environments. I like that. Record structs, I don't use structs as much as I probably should. But record structs are the exact same thing except they're value types. So they go out of scope, they get cleaned up immediately as soon as they go out of scope. So that sounds weird the way I described that. But when record structs go out of scope, they get cleaned up immediately instead of waiting for a garbage collector. So you'll see better memory utilization with record structs, but I haven't used them. So please demo use of system command lines. Sorry, not getting into the libraries today. Just not talking about building command line apps. We're going to be talking about the command line tools today. So building command line apps, something we can talk about for another time, but I didn't have it on the agenda. On YouTube, Tarun asks, do I think Windows 11 start menu looks similar to Mac OS dock? Sure. Hey, doesn't the Ubuntu start menu look like the Windows 10 start menu? Yeah. When there's a start menu or there's a user interface that folks like, everybody rushes to emulate it. Hey. Doesn't iPhone user interface look like Windows 3.1? Yes, it does. It looks exactly like Windows 3.1 Program Manager. That was written in, 1992? Yeah. Here it is 20 years later, and they're using the exact same interface from Windows 3.1. On your iPhone, on your Android. It's the exact same program group, program manager interface. And there are some folks out there that are watching that weren't alive in 1992. And old folks like me remember using that. It's the exact same thing. So, copying is the sincerest form of flattery. So, Edge makes you angry when it comes to how it handles colors. Well, it's picking up the color preferences in the operating system also. So, don't forget Opera. Sorry, no, I am going to forget Opera. No, I'm going to forget Opera. Mock is a mocking framework, so it's different from. Yes, it is. That's not a discussion with me. Hello, Napalm Codes. Good to see you. Yes, I've got my Penn State shirt on. Yes. You've seen a lot of XUnit in .NET. That's right. And a lot of NUnit, but we typically use XUnit with .NET. This series was on Mondays. We moved it to Wednesdays because there were a lot of holidays and things and events that knocked us off of Mondays. So we moved to Wednesdays to make it a little bit easier to ensure that we can continue running regularly. Also, it doesn't mean that I'm working on Sundays reviewing, practicing, and getting ready to deliver content. So, Acid Necro asks, is there a good add-on for Visual Studio that'll render Markdown files? Yes, there is a Markdown editor extension for Visual Studio that you can install that I know a lot of folks really like. Markdown Editor. Check out, it's just called Markdown Editor. So, and our friend Rick Strahl, he's a Microsoft MVP, has a tool called Markdown Monster that you can download and install in Visual Studio as well. That's a paid product that you can buy from Rick. Is there any kind of official certification specifically for C# and/or .NET? Not currently, no. Thoughts on the C#? This is a question I've been getting a lot from, and Tarun asks, thoughts on the C# interceptors feature proposal. And I discussed this with the language design team last week on their stand-up. It's an interesting idea. I personally equate it to a similar concept of dependency injection, but you're injecting and you're rewriting code at build time, which means only when you build code can you change and insert code into it. Potentially dangerous, potentially. But I'm interested to see where that goes. So, I see it as something interesting for when we want to build and deploy and swap out implementations of things to make things run faster on ARM processor instead of x64. But I feel like those optimizations should be in different DLLs that are built, deployed, and have their SHA hash checked. So, when would I use internal versus public and private? Asks C# Titan. When I need to share things across my entire project versus something across my entire solution or outside my library. Can I share my command app theme profile later? Yes, Surge Dev. You can find my configuration. And I should just open and show my .files repository on GitHub when we get to that segment. So there's that. And darn it. CSharpFritz, C# with, and we'll be jumping in there in a second. There it is. Doesn't that mouse look like the mouse from Xerox Park? That's right. Yeah, that's right. You're an MS-DOS guy? I'm sorry. Using an operating system that was deprecated 25 years ago. Do I use any custom things in my terminal like Oh My Posh? That's exactly what I use, Oh My Posh. You're correct, Renan. You love the snarky response. I feel like it's okay to be a little bit snarky when folks ask questions that quite frankly aren't realistic. Hey, Microsoft shouldn't be taking advantage of being able to talk to these .NET developers to make Bing faster. Do you think Google doesn't talk to the Angular folks when they go to design an application and put new features into Gmail and other applications they work? Do you think they don't talk to the team and say, hey, we want feature XYZ to make this faster, better, easier for our developers? Do you think they don't talk? Do you think they're not allowed to talk to the Angular developers? Do you think Facebook doesn't talk to the React developers? Hey, we want to make the homepage rendering faster and we want to add this feature, but we need this capability in the React framework. Can you help us out with that? Do you think the Facebook developers don't talk to the React team? Okay. Does anyone know why GetDB context is so different from .NET EF? Because it's PowerShell. That's why. DevKit will be a free tool. No, wait, hang on. C# DevKit is not a free tool. It's available with your Visual Studio license. If you're using the Visual Studio Community license, you can use DevKit under that C# DevKit under the same license. No, I'm not going to review any code, and binary formatter is not one that I want to touch. That's there be dragons. Let me wrap up here. We're through our AMA segment here. I'll get through the last couple questions here, and we'll move on and get into today's content. Would anyone look into your level and experience on Microsoft Learn when you apply for a job? If you share them over to LinkedIn, yes. Yes, interceptors are going to be very useful for AOT. I still have concerns. Relational versus non-relational databases. Why not both? Relational is really great for reporting. Non-relationals really great for reading, but you need some work to do to go between the two. Yeah, Dirtborn with the correct link there to my dot files. Thank you. What other language do I like most apart from C#? SQL. I'm a longtime database guy. I like relational database and SQL. Package manager for Windows, Winget. Bing talking to the .NET team makes .NET better. That's right, Decryptor. Not just .NET, but ASP.NET too. Yes. And if you follow the blog series on the .NET team's blog, the Bing team, when they take new ASP.NET features, their performance, their cost of goods that they use to run Bing goes down significantly. Literally, when .NET deploys new versions that Bing takes in, they save hundreds of thousands of dollars in deployment costs because the number of machines that they need to run Bing goes down so significantly because they can run more faster at higher performance. And there's documentation on that over on the blog. That's right, sarcasm adds flavor to the narrative. Yep. And I don't want to insult folks. I don't like to insult folks, but when you do ask questions that are not realistic, I want to turn that around a little bit. So, I do appreciate all the questions, and all questions are encouraged. But when you ask questions, gosh, why doesn't Microsoft build Visual Studio with Rust? Because we wrote our own programming languages, and we really like those. They could. They could use Go if they wanted, sure. But they've been building Visual Studio for 25 years, and we really like the languages that we've been building with. You want to do half C and half C#? Okay. You can import C DLLs into C#. That's right. Blazor does rock, Marvin. Thank you so much for that comment over there on YouTube. You don't like Azure being pushed in conferences about C#? I agree. However, there is a certain amount of, if we're showing .NET things, we're going to show you how to use .NET with Visual Studio, .NET with Visual Studio Code, .NET with our other products, and that does include Azure. I don't like the hard sell on Azure in .NET events. But there is a certain amount of, hey, this has been upgraded, how do I, or this is a new feature, how do I use this with Visual Studio, how do I use this with Azure, that it's incumbent on us to share. So, yeah, that's right, there's a lot of folks that use AWS with .NET. So, C# is your second favorite language? Cool. That's right, C# can be used with any platform. However, Microsoft folks will not be teaching and showing how to use C# with competitors' tools and products. That's, once again, that's the reality of business. You aren't going to find Apple people at Worldwide Developer Conference teaching you how to build Android apps with Xcode. That's not that's just flat not going to happen, right? You're not going to find folks at Google I/O teaching you how to build WPF apps with Flutter. Doesn't happen. They don't want to encourage you to use somebody else's product. So, all right. Let's get ready to dive in and talk about the command line, talk about some of the features that are going on over here. Before I get into this, did I not commit these last changes? Sure. That's fine. Yeah. let's do that. I'm going to merge this over here. I'm going to push that. Yes. Oh, man, that's fine. I'm going to jump over to... Thank you. Really? Let's see here. Let's do that. Oh, and I still have the theme for Visual Studio Code from last time up. That'll be fun. We'll have fun with that. Yeah, this is exactly what I wanted to merge. 1 second while I get this cleaned up. Right. There's that. Cool. There's where we want to be. So this is season 8 when you look at the repository over there. I can't believe 8. Ooh. Ooh, that's a lot. So let's talk about this. Yeah, I'll leave that. I like that theme. That's okay. We'll leave that one running and we'll talk about wrong readme. 1 second. We want this one to start. And not that one. That one. Put you over here, and this, and I think we're ready to go. Yeah, I think we're ready to go. I see a couple questions. I could show how to build an iOS app in C# Maui. I've done that. I've got a great blog post on how to do, well, I'm sorry. No, hang on. You won't see Apple folks show that. You will see Microsoft folks show how to do that. I have a video from a year ago about add an API to your website with C#. Is that the one? No, there's lots of others here on the .NET channel. Will there be updated Blazor demos? Yes, we're planning those right now. And community is in charge, not Microsoft. That's not the same. That's no. You're not going to see that. Do I still use my Linux laptop? Yes, I do. Yep, doing as many seasons as The Walking Dead. Yes. Let me head over to the other screen here, and let's start talking about .NET at the command line. Some tips and tricks. There we go. It's right up there. And yeah, let's have some fun with this. Which Linux distro do I use? I use Ubuntu or Kubuntu. You'll find me using, and I'm seeing that my camera's just a little bit wide here. Let's bring that in. Something like that. That's fine. There we go. Now I can still point and do the things. All right. So, yeah, I like Ubuntu or Kubuntu. I'm an original Slackware user back in 1996. I used Red Hat for a long time in the late 90s, early 2000s. I had Fedora installs in the 2010 to 2015 range, but I keep coming back to Ubuntu. So, all right. No, I do not. M. Johnstone. I don't have any content on ComInterrupt. Let's talk about .NET at the command line. That's our topic today. That's what we're going to go through and discuss here. And what I want to make sure that is crystal clear is that regardless of the operating system that you use, .NET in its latest incarnations, incantations? No, that's like spells and chanting. .NET in its latest revisions is completely And can we just move this over here? There we go. It is completely command line first. So you get the capability, the same capabilities that are in the editors, whether it's an IDE like Visual Studio or Rider or someone else's tool, or Visual Studio Code or somebody else's code editor. You get the exact same tools in there. All right. So there's, yeah, that's what I thought. Incarnations. Yeah. Head out to .net download. Right. This is the front page of the C# with CSharpFritz notes over here, going down into sessions, season 8, and we're on the command line entries here, and there's the README that we're working on. All right. So I'm just using it in Visual Studio Code so that I free up my code editor over here. So I have a screenshot of what the download looks like, but this website will detect what operating system you're using and make a recommendation appropriately for you. I happen to be on Windows, so it's going to recommend Windows downloads. You might be on Mac, you might be on Linux, and it'll recommend the appropriate Mac or Linux downloads for you here. There is preview versions you'll see up at the top that'll peek in when those are available. We're currently, at the time of this recording, we are currently moving towards .NET 8 being released, so .NET 8 Preview 6 is available to be downloaded. At the time that you're watching this video, it might be a .NET 8 release candidate. .NET 8 might be down here, and you might see 3 versions next to them. You might see 2 different versions down here because it's sometime in the future after this video is recorded. You might see a preview version up here for .NET 9 or .NET 10, depending on when you're watching this at some point in the future. Now, in 2023, at the time of this recording, we're working on .NET 8, and we have a preview version available here, and we have the 2 currently supported versions, .NET 7 and .NET 6, down here. So I can click through and I can download the SDK appropriate for my operating system with the big fat buttons here. I can also choose to grab other versions that will work on this operating system for different processor architectures, but it's taken its best guess here based on the browser signature for what to go grab here. Now, there's different support terms here. We've talked about support in the past. If you need to look at information about support, there is a link way down here at the bottom. Let me scroll down so you can see it. It's right there. It's just past. You click that support link and it'll show you the various versions and the .NET support policy and when support is forecast to end. I say forecast to end because if there are patches or there are other releases that change schedule, these dates will move. Typically doesn't happen, but they can move. Okay. So the current version of .NET 6, the latest patch version is 6.0.20. There was the last patches were released on July 11th, 2023 at the time of this recording, and support is going to end in November 2024 for .NET 6 and in May 2024 for .NET 7. These are 2 different support cycles. Always gotta confirm this and make sure folks understand this so that you know what to choose. Standard term support gets patches for 18 months. Long-term support gets 36 months. The even-numbered versions are long-term support. The odd-number versions are standard term support. So .NET 7, we're testing and we're trying new things in here. You're going to get support out through May 2024. So there will be a time between November 2023 and May 2024 where there will be 3 versions of .NET that are supported. And if that sounds like a lot to support, it is. So that's why we roll off and say, hey, we encourage you to migrate and move forward, and we make the .NET versions very backward compatible. And when we talk about the command line tools are 100% backward compatible. Things that you build and work on from older versions of .NET, you can still build and work on in newer versions of the .NET command line. That said, though, if there are templates or tools that you need if there are templates that you need from older versions of the .NET runtime and the .NET SDK, you can still download, you can still use them. They're open source. They are still available. We don't recommend them, but for each .NET SDK, the tools for the currently supported versions at the time of that release are also there and available to use. And there is a very complete list of versions of the tools that are available here that you can go and download and use if you need them for all the operating systems that were supported at the time. There will not be any patches applied to these. There will not be any updates applied to these. The updates are already published, but the older versions are available. They will not be removed. There are, I believe there are also Docker containers that are out there that use these older versions as well. Okay. .NET is cool before .NET Core? Yes, it was. Oh, yes, it was. You're very welcome, learner. Happy to hear that. C# Titan with a question. Is it necessary to download .NET 6 and 7? So that's what I'm talking about when I say you don't need to download the SDK for .NET 6 if there isn't anything specific, any specific tool in .NET 6 that you need. So I can look at my .NET version here at the command line by issuing the command .NET version. Okay, and it shows me that the version of the tools that I'm using the latest 8.0 Preview 6 tools. However, I believe it's what is it? I can list the versions here. No. I thought it was .NET info. Shows me all the runtimes that I have installed, and it shows me all the SDKs that I have installed as well, all the command line tools. So I have an 8.0.100. I have several 7.0 series. I have a couple release candidates in there. I have the latest preview version of 7.0.400. I believe that's the current version. I have a couple of the 6.0 versions. I have a 5.0 and I have a 3.1 version available. These two are no longer supported. And I have newer versions as well because I have products and projects and things that I built with those older versions. And I can control and interact with those other versions, and they all run and sit here side by side on my machine, right? If I go back into that info statement, right, it shows me other architectures that are installed and available. I have an x64. This is an AMD processor that I'm using here. This is an AMD Ryzen 5900 on this machine. So it's an x64. It's a 64-bit processor with 24 cores using Ryzen architecture, but it also can support building and working with 32-bit x86 binaries and ARM64 processors as well. I can't run projects that are built for ARM64. I can run the ones built for x86. The processor is compatible, but I can build and target ARM64 processors with the tools that I've installed. And it will also show me here's where you can find the .NET tools on disk. So that's .NET info that you can run. All right. A couple more questions here to catch up on here. Bishop asks, why will support end for .NET 7 before .NET 6? That's the difference between the standard term support and the long-term support. That's it. That's exactly, yes. You are correct. And right, that's the difference between choosing a long-term support and standard term support cycle. So .NET 6 is preferred and kept around for 3 years. .NET 7, so that we can test and try new things and push performance and new features forward, is only available for 18 months. So, Yes, you do. Yes, you do, Tarun. 9 opens a little bit after 6 ends. Just a little bit after, but they're intended to they're intended to have that continuity, so that there's always at least 2 versions. So we had a point back here where there was only 1. There was a point here where there was only 1, but you're going to see there's always at least 2 versions going forward, because we've snapped to this schedule. So, but occasionally there will be 3, right? There is a window here where there will be 6, 8, and 9 available briefly. Very briefly. Like only for November, as the one rolls off and the new one comes on. My prompt, so you can find in my dot files, there's even directions about how to use Oh My Posh there. So there's my dot files if you're interested in getting them, including the background image, the Fritz and Friends background image that I use. And this is Windows Terminal with, I believe I exported the configuration for Windows Terminal as well. Am I using PowerShell or Windows? This is PowerShell. I'm not going to use Linux today, but everything that I'm doing works the same on Linux. What? We'll just take there. Here they come. Here they come on YouTube. It was bound to happen. So, yep, the Oh My Posh theme is listed there. It is exported the font, and there's my theme available. So, how you doing there, AB Code? So, installing and getting .NET for Windows and Mac, easy. You can download and install from here as well. But there are also instructions if you want to install and run on Linux and use the package managers for the various Linux distributions. I'm an Ubuntu person. apt-get is real easy to use. You can the packages to install and run .NET are available both in a Microsoft repository where you're going to see them updated as new packages and preview packages are available, and they're available when they snap and there's a release version in an Ubuntu managed repository that you can go to and check out. So all that at the command line, easy to do. There are scripts available for various distributions that you can get to. I linked to it here in the Learn documentation. So Alpine, CentOS, Debian, Fedora, OpenSUSE. I'm not familiar with SLES. But you can find appropriate package instructions to install on all of those. If you want to use Snap repository, whatever. RPM, I think, is that still out there? Is that still a thing? There's instructions appropriately. DNF, yep, to go and install. I guess RPM isn't a thing anymore. Whatever. So that's available for you to install. And if you don't like the package manager, there's an install script that you can get that will bring down the binaries and configure them in I think is it user local share.net, I think is the folder that it gets put into by default on Linux, and it will make that available and get that in your path so that you can install and work with the .NET tools on Linux. If you don't want to use a package manager, maybe you rolled your own distribution, or maybe you want to do an install in your own custom container image, or you have a continuous integration system, or you're building for an IoT device. and you want to download and install just the runtime appropriately. There's a script here that you can use to download runtimes, SDKs at this location, .NET v1 .NET install sh. And if you browse to that location, here it is, right? And if I open that file, come here, you. We're going to come over here. Let's open that in Notepad. Nope. Notepad. There we go. So you can see script that'll allow you to go through, very clear. It's going to try and figure out what version of a known distribution and how to configure and lay out. And it's a very complete script here with information to get you started to install and configure .NET for you. So it'd be nice if the previews were available in APT as well. Yeah, I can understand that. Sure. I thought they were available on the Microsoft feed. I thought they were. Let me get the gunner glasses going here. SUSE Linux Enterprise. Ah, that's what it is. Okay, thank you. The tooling is Yum and Zipper. Ah, okay. See, it's been a while since I've worked with the Red Hat distributions. I've been more Ubuntu recently. No, Winget still has a ways to go to catch up to the Linux package managers. So, all right. That's off topic to Rune. I'm not going to answer that question right now. Okay, so different ways to get this installed, get running. I mentioned about just deciding which version of .NET, and it has the templates for those supported versions available for you. So check this out. Let's go back over here, clear this out. If I say .NET new, and I want to build a web application, and I pass in a help argument, actually, because I have other frameworks installed here, I can target those by changing my framework here, and it will go grab templates and install appropriately for those frameworks. So if you need the older versions the older things available, right? If you need those older templates available, sure, go grab and put down those older SDKs, and then you can use the latest SDK to target and work with those older versions with the -f, the framework command that you can pass in here, framework argument. So I recommend folks go get the latest one. Go get it. But you can control what version is running using global JSON. Now I put down a global JSON inside the repository that we're working with here. Where is it? There it is. So inside my folder here, I can specify this is the version of .NET that this folder uses. Okay, so global JSON specifies for this folder, for this directory, and any child directories of this, we're going to use this version of .NET. Okay, so I can force to the 6.0.100 version. So I'm here in the 8.0.03 folder, right? If we take a look, you see, let me get into, no, I'm in the 0803 branch. I'm in the season 8 folder. If I say .NET version here, and it'll report what version of the SDK I'm using, 8.0.100. If I go into that 8.03 folder, I have the global JSON here that has that version that says, hey, use 6.0.100. Well, now when I say .NET version, stand by. If I say latest patch, Do latest. I don't have a latest patch on that. There we go. If I say latest minor, it upgraded to 60412. And it's grabbed that, even though I've told it, well, I want 60100. Well, I don't have 60100 on this machine. I have it on another machine. So we're going to use 60412. That's just a little bit below the screen there. There you go. 60412. Okay. I can control how it rolls forward. You saw me do that briefly here with this roll forward command. Visual Studio Code knows the schema for this. It gives me a little IntelliSense help here. Yes, that's a feature we built into Visual Studio Code, and gosh, that's a competitive advantage for Microsoft because we build the same tools. Anybody can build this. So the documentation is available. It's clearly out there, and you can interpret and read these schemas. So I can say disable. It must match the version that I requested, right? The feature is the first digit of the third number there. I could say, well, it must match that version. I could say latest feature that 100 can be upgraded, but the first two numbers must match. Latest minor says I'll take 6 and anything after that can be upgraded. Latest patch says this number can be anything great, 100 or greater. And latest major says just give me the latest one, right? So if I say latest major and I run .NET version again, I get my 80100 preview. But there's also the ability to turn on and off whether or not you want to work with a pre-release. And I have it turned on by default here. I'll flip that over to false. And now it defaults to 60412. When I go back and look at my info, right? Preview, release candidate 412 is the latest one that I have. That isn't a preview version. But I like to live dangerously, so I have that turned on. If you do not have a global JSON file on disk, if you don't have one of these, it'll default to getting whatever the latest one is that you have installed. It'll grab the latest SDK. Now, this isn't the .NET runtime that you're building your application with. This is the version of the command line that you're using. Those are two different things. Let's make sure we get that right. The version of your project, right? So I could say .NET new web, right? Let me... I don't need that whole thing. .NET new version, and it shows me I'm on the 8.0 version. So I can still do .NET new web, and I could say .NET 6.0. And it'll give me a .NET 6 project here, right? And I shouldn't have put it right there. I shouldn't have put it there. Yes, remove that. Yes. Remove program CS. Remove the app settings. Cool. What I should have done is put that into a folder like this, my web app. There it is. So now I'm working at the command line and I have my folder there that I can work on. And everything isolated, and you can see, so I'm using Oh My Posh. It sees that there's a .NET project in the folder that I'm working in, and there's the version on my command line. This is a PowerShell update. You can get these types of power lines in tmux and other tools that'll report that version for you. And if I copy, I can generate a global JSON file if I'd like here. And it'll put one down. And if I open that one, right, and change this back to, what was it, 60400? And it finds the 60412 and uses that. Cool. So I can control and drive things from here. And while I'm up here, it's still 80100. So you have flexibility to deploy and run your SDKs side by side. And as a developer, you shouldn't care how many of these that you have available. Use that little global JSON to turn on and off which versions you need. For the most part, you should be able to run with just the latest version, wherever it is that you're working. So, hey, Luella, welcome. Can Visual Studio Code create a new project with GUI? No. Visual Studio Code is a text editor, not a visual editor. You can certainly create a WPF or WinForms app, but you won't get designers for it because Visual Studio Code is a text editor. There we go. That's right. These are Microsoft presentations. So, all right. So that's a little bit about controlling the versions of things and bouncing around between them. Back over to here. So version control. Which version do I have installed? You've seen me use these two commands now several times. .NET version will show you the version of the current SDK, and .NET info shows all the versions of the things that I have installed. And importantly, there's runtime versions installed. This is important if you want to install a runtime on machines that you're not doing software development on. You can install and have these runtimes available so that you don't have to deploy your runtime with your application, right? You have a shared runtime that is available that you don't need to carry around and have multiple copies sitting on your end users' desks, right? So we'll talk about that in just a few minutes here. The general format you're going to see about these is .NET, some sort of a command, new, run, build, and then some sort of descriptor that goes with it. New website, new watch, test, EF database update. And that's how you bounce through and interact with these things. All commands have help text available. Don't be afraid to type -- help. Even if you start providing commands in addition and they start stacking like this, throw a -- help on there and see what it's doing, and it will tell you how to add on other additional commands. Hey, I'd like some verbose logging of what you're doing. Sure, you can do that, and it will increase the verbosity, or make it quiet if you'd like. Make it completely shut off output. You can control those things. We're going to talk about a couple of those features and go through that. Cinzy Mac asks, is there an easy way to remove or uninstall old SDKs? So if we do just .NET help, there is an SDK command available now. Clear that. And if we look at that one, it will check the SDK. I'm hoping that there is a series of install, uninstall tools there. But there are uninstall tools available that you can download and will help you remove older versions. So .NET Core uninstall. So this is actually a good time to talk about additional tools that you can install. So you can, that's on Mac. Now they want me to do an MSI. All right, fine. I think I already have this installed. Thank you. Yes, I know. Yep, go ahead. Cool. And I think it's just available now. And then .NET Core uninstall. And now we can say we'll list the ones that can be removed, what if, and specify remove specific versions, right? So when I do a .NET info here, there's a 3.1 version there. If I want to remove that, right? Let's run with list, and I can remove the 3.1.4.26. And it's got some notes here about which ones I can remove and can't remove. So remove 3.1.4.26. Oh, I don't have admin privileges to do that. Fine, I won't do it right now. But if you're an admin user, you can certainly do that and remove those. How can we switch .NET SDK version? I just showed that, Thomas, using global JSON files. Hey, Code with Sean. Hey, Quatch. I could imitate Adrian Cronauer, played by Robin Williams. But I'll save that for another time. The solution that you find is to change the folder in the environment. What folder? No, don't do that. Don't do that. No. Don't do that. Put down a global JSON file like you just saw me do here. Right? This has a global JSON file that says use the 6.0 version. Right? If I change this... Now it doesn't. I think I could do star. Doesn't that work? Yeah, and it upgraded to 8. Because I don't have... Where's my .NET info? Yeah, these are release candidates and previews. So I could ask for the 70400. Nope, still didn't pick it up. Is that one going to work? Yeah, there we go. So it picked up the 70400 and is using that one. Yeah, something like sudo in Windows Terminal would be nice. But they want us to rerun the terminal in a different... So, can I do... Well, right, latest... is right if by saying roll forward, right? If I say come here, you, right, that'll always roll forward to the latest one that's installed. And if I don't have a global JSON file, it'll roll forward to the latest, right? What I should do for this little demo that I'm doing here is say allow pre-release, get rid of that, and just say 700, which doesn't really exist. If I say that, am I going to get... No. Come on now. No, not roll forward. I keep forgetting that. Right, so if I say roll forward to the latest minor release, I'll get the 70400. Even though I specified, I could even specify just 700, which doesn't really exist, and I still get the 701 400. And it'll always just roll forward like that for me. So, okay. So that's a little bit about version management. I wanted to get in and talk about now workloads. So if you're working with .NET MAUI or you're working with WebAssembly projects, you might not have all the tools you need to build for the various operating systems or to build and target and deploy WebAssembly optimized code. So we provide those as a secondary download with what we call workloads. And these workloads are available for you to download and install so that you can work with Android or have the MAUI tools for these various operating systems, Windows, Mac OS, iOS, Android, those are the ones I have installed. So there we go. These are all the ones that are available. So Android, iOS, Mac Catalyst, Mac OS for the 2 different versions of Mac OS. MAUI capabilities, there's Tizen if you want to install and build something for Tizen, the Samsung operating system. That's a flavor of Android. Various different Windows runtimes, tvOS, and WebAssembly tools if you want to build and target native WebAssembly stuff. So these are add-ons that don't come by default. And when folks are saying, oh my gosh, that tool is so bloated and blah, blah, this is the kind of thing we're doing to slim this down because not everybody needs all these things for every install and work with .NET. But what that does mean is you can set up images, containers that do have those things installed and available for continuous integration or deployment or build or whatever, and just point over there and say, hey, go use that thing to build or install and run it locally. Whatever. It's your choice. If you ask Samsung, they claim it's not based on Android. It's not based on Android, but it sure looks like it. So let's talk about creating applications now. Let's get in and actually start building applications. And you saw me run the .NET new command. You can get a list of all the projects templates that are available by executing .NET new. The old way to do this was .NET new -- list. That was the argument to trigger a list of templates. If you just execute .NET new and don't give it any arguments, it'll show you here's a list of common templates that are available and the short name of that template to build a web application or a Blazor app or class libraries, console applications. But you can get a complete list now by saying .NET new list. -- list works also, but it's being deprecated. And there's a note at the top that, hey, this is being deprecated. You can see I've got a lot of templates installed on my operating system here, including MAUI templates, Android templates, ASP.NET Core, Blazor, file templates like to generate a class file, not just project templates, iOS templates, Mac templates, unit testing templates, configuration files, solution files, lots of templates that are available out there. And when you executed .NET new with the .NET 8 SDK, there are templates available you can search for on NuGet.org, right? Our public repository. So if we say .NET new search, we can search for, right? Let's go find the Microsoft templates that are out there. And it'll show you, here's all the templates that are available if you want to install these. So templates for working with Azure Functions, right? These are the I filtered by Microsoft as the author. So I got Azure Functions, I got ASP.NET Core templates, .NET Web Client templates for Less and Sass and TypeScript, some MAUI templates available, identity templates, sure, right? Power Platform templates, SQL project templates. So the point is you can use the .NET command line to work with all different kinds of projects because .NET integrates with so many different things. We're providing those extension points for folks to be able to add in and work with whatever you need all at the command line. Yes, you're going to get additional tooling and additional productivity and support when you start using it with Visual Studio Code or full Visual Studio. But if you're a command line person, if you don't want to buy Visual Studio, you don't like Visual Studio Code, it's all available at the command line and it all works. Johan asks, how do you install a specific package? So, are you asking about tools or templates? Give me a little bit more context there. Anybody use Visual Basic? If you want to create a Visual Basic project, there are templates that are available for Visual Basic also. Not all of them have Visual Basic templates, but some of them do, and some of them are no longer offered in Visual Basic. So I can create a class library in Visual Basic. I can create, let me see, unit tests in Visual Basic. WPF and Windows Forms applications I can create in Visual Basic. F# projects you see are available in the base, some of the templates that are available. These templates are just files. They're actually sitting inside of a NuGet package, but it's just a file that it pops out of the package and fills in some parameters on disk. How do you install new templates? That's a good question, Johan. Let's do that. So let's take a look back. We'll run that search again. Let's see. Let's find... let me zoom out just a smidge here. Run that one more time so we can get a little bit better format. Let me pick one out here. I don't want to do WASI. That's a little bit... Let's go grab for less style sheets, right? So let me go install one for less, okay? And it has instructions right down here at the bottom. .NET new install, and then the name of the package. So I believe I can. I don't think I can give it the short name. Let's give it a try. .NET new install less. If I want just the less package, yeah, here we go. Done. Really? Really? Did it not? It didn't install it. Why didn't you install it? Give it. No templates were found in package. Oh, because I think you need to give it the full name, right? So if I tell it, go find me the less one. So there's the less style sheet. And it's in this package. Microsoft.NET Web Client Web Templates. Let me hit carriage return so we can see that there. So if I want to grab that. .NET new install, and you got to give it the full package name. And now I get less Sass and the TypeScript files. So now if I do .NET new list, less Sass and TypeScript are available. So easy to do, and there's lots of templates out there that you can find and install and work with. Let me answer the question about VB. If you want to build a VB project, if you want to write, I stood up just a web project using C#. If I want to do .NET new, let's build a console application, and I want to change and say, well, build that with VB. I can pass in dash lang here. Right, so dash lang VB. And I put it in the same folder again. But you can see there's program VB. Yes, yes, remove all the things. Yes. I forgot. But you can see there's the VB project file. Remove that. And I think, is that all of them? Yeah. So you can specify and configure Visual Basic projects at the command line as well. Yeah, I do need a Control C because I keep doing that. All right, so I showed .NET New List. I showed some of the arguments there. You can specify the name of the project with -N. -O specifies an output folder to output into when you run .NET New, and -F specifies the framework to build with. Running the project is as easy as .NET Run, but .NET Run actually restores packages, builds, and launches the project for you. So let me go back to here. If I say .NET Run, you see it says it's building. So it'll build, launch the project. I can open it in my browser. Yes, we should talk about this, certifications. And there it is. It's running it with SSL, and I'm getting an error here that, hey, we don't like this. We don't like this certificate. Right here, look at the certificate that this provided for localhost. We don't like that. By default, some of the browsers will throw that error message, hey, this is a localhost certificate. We don't like that. A self-signed localhost certificate. That's a potential security violation. As a developer, you should be okay with knowing how and when that runs on your system. But if you need to work with the developer certifications, there's the .NET Dev Certs command. And you specify, we're going to work with the HTTP certification, and you can manage, install, set up the trust for it so that you can run and test with SSL on localhost with .NET here, all right here at the command line. Pretty easy to configure and use. It's a little bit trickier to do this install on Linux, only because of the way the certificates are installed and managed over there. So, but on Windows and Mac, it'll set this up and install it for you. All right, continuing. So, restore, build, you can run separately, right? If you have some reason that you want to run those as separate steps in your build process, you can. You can always run your restore for packages, .NET restore at any time, but you can also run .NET clean, and it will tell you, here are the files that I'm deleting. And this is the same as deleting all the files from your bin folder, deleting all the files from your obj folder, right? Your objects and your binary output. So when we look in the bin folder, there's nothing in the .NET 6. The folder structure is there, but there's no DLLs in there. Similarly, if we look in the obj folder, it's got these pointers for the packages that it restored and the resolution of them. But I don't believe. Yeah, file cache, but a lot of this stuff is emptied out. No longer available there for you. So you have a clean build to work with. Typically, though, when we're building in debug mode, and you're going to want to build for deployment in release mode. So you can pass in the -C to say, hey, run this in release mode instead. So .NET run release, and it'll run that exact same website. Great, you got hello world, big deal. But it's running in release mode. Okay. So all the debug notes and the performance optimizations are built in to running the product at that point. Building for other runtimes. So I really enjoy building for the Raspberry Pi. Raspberry Pi, though, is Linux with ARM64. It's an ARM64 processor. So you can build and target that other runtime by passing in a -R here. I don't think... Right, can I pass in the dash? Yeah, you can specify a target runtime to build for. Now that'll build for that and leave it on disk. And you can specify where you want the build output to be placed so that it isn't just in the bin folder. Okay. And target architecture. Target architecture, I look at runtime and architecture kind of are one and the same. I like using Linux-ARM64 instead of specifying Linux and then ARM64 as another argument. I like wrapping those together. The list of runtimes that are supported, I provide a link here for it. This is what they call the runtime ID or RID catalog. And there's a graph here of which versions are supported and they roll over to other versions. So Windows, not version specific, Windows 7, Windows 8.1, Windows 11, and Windows 10 all actually have a base of Windows 10. There's a whole bunch of Linux runtime IDs. But, right, you can get most Linux distributions by just saying Linux x64 or Linux ARM64. But if there's other processor models you need, well, the details for those are here. There's the Tizen Mac runtime IDs, and you can see because they behave differently on different versions of Mac, there's different runtime IDs for Mac. Just are. Same thing for iOS. So Android, you can go with not version specific, but because there's various updates, you have to target the various versions of Android if you want to be specific. Okay. So that's runtime IDs and what you can do with that. You'll typically do that when publishing. When you publish, you can publish and say, well, build this in release mode for ARM64, and let's put it into a different folder, into my dist folder here. So let's go build this simple website, put it into a dist folder so it's ready to run on a Raspberry Pi, right? So this is going to take a look at which projects to restore. It's going to set it up and get it ready to run. This is running a .NET 7 version. And if I look in the dist folder, it puts down all the DLLs, everything I need as one folder. We call this a self-contained deployment. Okay? That's a lot of stuff to carry with you to go run over there. If we take this up to .NET 8, right? So now it's .NET 8. And we level up the version of this. Let's remove the dist folder, right? And let's run Notepad on our project file. Change this to .NET 8, right? And now if we do .NET Publish for ARM64. So all I did was change the version number. And if I look in the dist folder, why is there so much less here? By default, starting with .NET 8, when you publish, we're going to build and publish with what's called shared framework model. So it assumes that by default there's a shared framework somewhere on disk that this can refer to. Okay? So there's a .NET command line there that can run and execute this. If you still want the whole enchilada there, right? You want to specify, well, I want it to be self-contained and include everything. Pass the --sc argument into this. Okay? So I'll go back to that command --sc, and we'll call this dist all. And I believe it also does tree shaking along the way. I can't remember. I think it does. We might not have done it on this. No. It didn't. Maybe I'm just thinking about Blazor, but there's the full list. Additionally, besides giving you the entire everything for it, where is it? My cool app, right? My web app. Notice not only does it give me my web app DLL, but it also gives me an executable file here that's in the executable format for the target operating system, right? If this was targeting Windows, this would be mywebapp.exe. But because I'm targeting a Linux on ARM64, this is an executable with no extension. So you can just call my web app and it launches the application. Right? So if we run that, no. Darn it. Clear, go back up. Right? So if instead here, right, if I say Win10 x64, and we say dist win, right? I think that's the right RID for Windows. So now it's going to build specific for Windows and include everything to deploy and run on Windows. Okay? So if I look in that folder, right, all the DLLs, but these are the DLLs built for Windows. Scroll back up, my web app, and it's my web app exe in there. And here on Windows, right, I can run that and it starts my website. Come on now. Why aren't you navigating to it? It did. It just didn't change tabs. So there it is, running as an exe on Windows. Install that as a service and use it however you need. All right. Wow, I am just about out of time. Wrapping up, if you have unit tests, you can run them with .NET Test. And there's also live reload you can enable here with the .NET Watch command. So I'll jump up one here. And if I run, let's actually split the screen. No, don't split it that way. Split it this way. Jump down into that folder. '0803. Right. So if I'm in here and I run .NET Watch, it's going to start the application and start the website, and it's going to keep an eye on things and attempt to patch. So there it is, hello world. And if I go back over here in my source folder, I'll jump down into program. It says hello world. I'll change this to say hello live stream. Save that. Well, that didn't refresh, but you see here, hot reload succeeded. And if I refresh, it rebuilt and it has the new content available. So very, very handy so that you're not constantly stopping and starting and reloading your application. Okay. You can use that to make this easier. But what I like is also having the test capabilities here under that same watch feature. So I'm going to output this to a folder called my tests. Sure. If I don't specify a name, it takes the same name as the folder. So I'll go into my tests. I have a test project here, and I can run .NET Test, and it'll execute the test that's generated by default in there. And you can see at the bottom, it passed. And I can tell it to watch those tests by running .NET watch test. And it'll sit out here and watch for changes and execute those tests. And it says, well, there weren't any changes. I'll go back over to my project over here. Right. I'll change that. It's going to rebuild. Really? Why didn't it? What? Public void test 2. Sure, do that. And for XUnit, we make these facts. Saved. Why isn't it? Yeah, it's not showing the results of the tests. I'm doing something wrong. The last things that I wanted to talk about today were around text editor. There's lots of great plugins from our friends in the OmniSharp project. Go to omnisharp.net, and they talk about how they built what is now language server protocol, so that you can plug into your favorite text editor. Atom's no longer being developed. Brackets is no longer being developed, but these 4 are, and you can install and work with extensions so that you can have .NET syntax highlighting in Vim. And it works really, really nicely, getting that same IntelliCode type ahead experience in Vim or Emacs, right? Oh, they didn't include a screenshot for Emacs. But there's tools here that you can use to get it all set up and running in Emacs. Sublime as well. And OmniSharp is very much the community plugin for C# in Visual Studio Code. OmniSharp works well in Vim. NeoVim requires a bit of customization. Yeah. And I'm trying to... I want to get a complete configuration together for Vim with OmniSharp that looks and feels like Visual Studio. So you have the same keystrokes for activating IntelliSense and code completion. Some of the refactoring gestures are all the same. I'd love to get that complete and make that available for folks. We've gone through a lot here today. We've gone through a lot. There's a lot you can do with .NET at the command line. All of the commands that are available work on every operating system that you can install .NET on. You don't need to do things different on Linux or Mac or Windows. Once you get past the install, and there's different ways because of those different operating systems to install the tools, but once they're installed, the command lines all work the same. It's really great stuff, and I hope it's clear that you can be successful with .NET wherever it is that you want to write code. All right? Thank you so much for tuning in today. It's been a lot of fun talking about this. I will be back next week, and I think we're going to do an errata show. I think we're going to just do straight Q&A next week, and we'll have some fun in there. Yeah, CSHTML and XAML highlighting are not there in OmniSharp, but C# code, VB code, yep, works great. Next week we'll do an errata show. We'll do straight Q&A, answering questions, talking about some of the latest things that are going on in .NET, work through some sample code. We had a question about how to work with func syntax today. And starting back in August, yeah, let's get back and restart C# for beginners and go through that series and level up some of those items and talk about what it's like as we get ready for C# 12 and .NET 8. All right. For those of you watching on YouTube, have a fantastic rest of your day. There are links to more videos down here. Also over on this side, check them out. The playlist C# for CSharpFritz has lots more in this series, and there's going to be other folks live streaming later today, tomorrow, that you can catch up with. And for those of you that are on Twitch, let's set up for the raid. Let's set up a raid. Let's connect with somebody else who's broadcasting on the big Twitch TV network that we can send you over to, that's doing something fun, doing something interesting. And as I look around the horn at folks that are also doing some development, I'm going to send you over to our friend Tim Bodette, who's doing some game development. Yeah. So here comes the raid. Yeah, there we go. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. Always a pleasure hanging out with you. I will see you next Wednesday for a full Q&A session. Unscripted, Fritz Unplugged. We'll do some demos on the fly and answer your questions. Everything's going to be on the table around C#, .NET, Azure, and Visual Studio Code. I hope you have a great rest of your day wherever you might be, however much of the day is left for you, and I wish you good health and good coding. Take care. Did I hit the button right there? Is that the right one? I think it was. Let's go!